Hi, and welcome to this training course on how to create undetectable malware. I encourage you to take lots of notes, so grab a notebook or a journal so you can have all your notes in one central spot. There are many lessons that you may need to revise and come back to as need be. What you will get in this program is you will understand what malware is, you will learn how the different types of malware work, you will be able to install Python and pip by the end of this tutorial series. You will learn about the Veil framework and how to install that. You will learn about the Genome desktop. You will learn how to install Wine Mono. You will learn about Metasploit and how to install Metasploit successfully. You will then test the MSF console. You will then learn how to create an exploit with Veil. We will then take that exploit and then install that on a Windows 10 machine. You will also learn how to encrypt these payloads so that it avoids detection by any or most antivirus software. Who is this course for? This course is for anyone wanting to learn about ethical hacking and malware. It's also for anyone wanting to be a highly sought after ethical hacker, because by understanding how hackers think and how they go about creating these different malware, especially undetectable malware, you will be able to go to corporations with this additional skill set that most people won't bother learning about. By understanding the psychology of the hacker, the motivations of the hacker, and why they don't use off-the-shelf products to create malware. So now let's get started with the training. I want to welcome you to this tutorial on how hackers create undetectable malware and viruses. In one of my previous courses, we looked at how hackers create malware using the Metasploit framework and a few other methods. While this malware was somewhat undetectable by most virus scanners, it was detected by other scanners. So in this tutorial series, we'll be looking at how hackers create mostly undetectable malicious viruses or trojans, etc., using the Veil framework. Veil is available on Linux-based machines, so in this tutorial series, we'll be using the CentOS 7 Linux-based machine. So firstly, I want to go to the Veil framework website. So let's open up a browser and go to the Veil framework website. So let's go in to Firefox and we will go to type in Veil framework. And this will be the official Veil framework website that I'll show you. The Veil framework is a collection of different modules. So let's go to the official website first, veil-framework.com, and let's have a look at the different modules that are available. Once you are on the website, you will see the Veil-evasion, Veil ordnance, Veil catapult, power tools, and Veil pillage. So I'll go through these options now and explain to you what each one is. The Veil evasion is a module that allows payloads to be created. So let's go through and have a quick look at the website. But this particular Veil framework allows a hacker to obfuscate the virus or Trojan from antivirus detection. So it then allows mutation of this particular program or exe file, which makes it almost undetectable by most virus scanners. So let's go to the Veil evasion, which is a tool to generate payload executables that bypass most common antivirus solutions. So this is how hackers would use the Veil evasion to then create a payload executable that bypasses the antivirus solutions. You will note that the Veil framework is also located on the GitHub website. And Veil evasion is a part of a number of modules that we will be installing shortly. As you can see, this is just one part which allows payload executables to be created that will then be undetectable by most antivirus systems. Now there's Veil Ordnance, which is a tool that can be used to quickly generate valid stager shellcode. Then we have the Catapult system, which is a module that allows for the payload to be delivered. So it's a payload delivery tool that integrates with Veil Evasion. I'll also talk about the Veil Pillage module, which is the module that allows post-exploitation. So allows the user to then take control, or the hacker to take control of a victim's machine, basically allowing mostly admin rights to a Windows-based machine. We also have a section called Power Tools, which is basically a collection of PowerShell projects. But for now, we want to start with the installation of the Veil framework. So to do that, we need to go to our CentOS 7 machine, and then we want to log in using the SSH command using the root user. So let's go in and do that. We have an IP address here which we will be using. So SSH 192 with the root user 192.168.56.102, and that will allow us to log in as root. Once that has been logged in, we can then move on to install Python. We will be using Python because Python has the program called pip, which will allow us to install different modules and allow us to create programs using Python. So let's type in the release, and you'll see here I'm using 7.2, CentOS Linux 7.2, and we have a 64-bit operating system as listed here. We now want to install the Python program because Python has a pip package manager, which allows us to install packages quite easily by using pip. So to do that, we need to run the yum install command, which will allow us to install Python. So to do that, the command for that is yum install Python. So let's type that now, which is yum install and then Python. And once that is entered, we can run this, and let's have a look at the results of Python installing. Okay, so I have an error here, and I'm leaving the error in for now because we have two IP addresses or two interface cards in this machine. Unfortunately, only one IP address has been allocated. We need to get the other IP address because we are running two adapters here. We have a host only adapter, and which connects directly to the machine, and then we have a NAT adapter which allows us to connect to the internet. So for that reason, we seem to have one IP address assigned but not both. So to do that, I need to go back to this section and run this command and get an IP address, which is the DH client. And once I run that, an IP address should be assigned. And let's have a look at the IP address now. And you'll see we have an IP address which is 10.0.3.15. Now I can go into the VI editor and I will take out this name server. We don't need that for now. Let me save this file. And before I run this, let me also quickly install or write down another name server, which is the Google name server. And let's call it 8.8.8.8. And let's save the file now. Let's also do a yum update, which will then give us the latest repositories and make sure we are running the latest versions of things. So let this run through, and I'll leave this here so you can actually see the whole process of the actual installation. So for now, we have the CentOS 7 machine. We are doing a yum update, and then we'll install Python after we have updated the system. We are also performing the yum update to ensure that we are not using any old repositories, and the repositories that we have on this machine are the new ones. So let this all install, and once that has been installed, we'll move on to installing Python. This process may take a while depending on firstly your internet connection and also the speed of your processor. Again, I'm leaving this in so you can actually see the process, and as you install it on your end, you can follow along with these screens. Now the yum update has downloaded all the files and it is going through the installation process. We'll just wait for the installation process to finish, and what I think I'll do in the next video is then show you how we install the modules required for Python. So let's just make sure this process works fine. Firstly, let the installation finish and then it'll do a cleanup, and once the cleanup is complete, we'll end the video and then move on to installing the modules that are required. Again, this may take a little while because we hadn't done the update previously. We are now doing the update as we speak so that we have the next step working perfectly. So we had to make sure we had a DHCP command to get an IP address for the other adapter. The one adapter was working fine, but the other IP address wasn't available, which wasn't allowing us to update using yum. Now we decided to do the yum update, which is almost complete, and once that is complete, we will move on to installing the modules required. Again, we are building an undetectable malware or Trojan or virus, etc., as hackers would do in an environment which would then allow them to take control of victim machines. This is purely for information use only. I want to show you how hackers think and how they create malicious code that can then infiltrate networks or victim machines. This exercise is being done in a closed environment, so please make sure you are not doing this on any public machines, as there are significant consequences and possible jail time if you are caught using this in a malicious way. So now we're ready to install Python, so we can go back to typing in yum install Python. So just clear the screen, yum install Python, and once that's done, I want to move into installing pip. So let's just wait for this to quickly install. All right, now we go to a browser and I want to type in pip install to get the appropriate link for us to install pip. So let's do that, and we'll find the official site for Python. It's the second link here, packaging.python.org. We'll go here and we'll have a look at the requirements for Python. If we scroll down, here it says the requirements for installing Python. And you see here it says if you have Python greater than or equal to 2.79 or Python greater than or equal to 3.4. To install pip, we need to have these two versions, and then we also need to have a few other things. So let's just check the version of Python we have on this machine. I'm sorry, I need to put lowercase p. So we see we have version 2.75, which is not the required version for the pip package manager. So to do that, we need to go back to the requirements and let's have a look at what we need to do to get the correct version. If I scroll down, we'll see we need the setup tools, and we'll also need the wheel. So let's go down and find the links required to install that. You'll have to go through the same process depending on what version of Python you have on your machine. So let's go in, and I've found another link that allows us to either use the yum or apt-get. Because I'm running CentOS 7, I'll be using yum. Let's go in and look for the proper commands that are required to get this to work. So we need to install the wheel and the setup tools. So this link, as I scroll down, will tell us the commands. So here we have upgrade, yum upgrade. So let me copy this particular link to upgrade Python, yum upgrade Python setup tools. And let's type that command in. And as we'll see, that is already no updates required. First thing I need to do is install it. So let's just install that first to make sure we have the latest version. And as we'll see, that has worked now. So if the upgrade doesn't work, you need to go through to install that. Once this is done, we can move on to the next command, which is install Python pip and the Python wheel. So let's go in and do that. And as you see, this is installing. So once this is complete, we are now ready to make sure we have the latest version of Python and the latest Python wheel and setup tools. Now that has been complete, we want to move on to using pip to install one more program called the PyInstaller. So to do that, we go back to our CentOS 7 machine, and what I'll do here is make sure we type in the command pi to see the pip file has now available to us. So here we are, we see pip available to us. So we type in pip install, and we want to type in PyInstaller. So capital P Y, capital I in installer, so PyInstaller. And once that has been installed, we will be ready to move on to the next step. So pip install PyInstaller. I'll just wait a couple seconds for this to install correctly. And once this has been installed, we will move on to the next step where we will be installing the Veil framework. And here we see that PyInstaller has successfully installed. Before we finalize the installation of the Veil framework, we have a few more steps required. One of those steps is to install PyCrypto. PyCrypto is a cryptography toolkit for Python. It allows us to encrypt functions in Python, and we do need to install this specific PyCrypto. To do that, the first thing we want to do is run the yum search option to find PyCrypto. So to do that, we type in yum search PyCrypto, which will show us the PyCrypto file that we need to install. That package is listed here. Now, it also tells us we can search all. So if I type in all here, it'll show us the different PyCrypto versions that we can then install. So I'll just copy this and let's install PyCrypto before we move on to the next step. The file is called python-crypto. So I've typed in yum install python-crypto, and we'll wait for this file to be installed. Once this package has been installed, we can move on to the next step, which is installing Git. So let's just wait for this to all install okay. And the next step is to install Git. So to do that, we do the yum install again. So yum install Git, which will install the Git repository for us. And once we have the Git repository done, we can go to the GitHub website and install Veil. We will need to clone Veil. So let's just wait for this to complete. It's downloading and installing. Once we have the command prompt again, we can go to the GitHub website. You can search for GitHub and Veil framework, and that will give you the Veil framework link. I have a link opened here, so I'll just go to that link and we will see the command to clone Veil. Let's go there now, and here's the link. And if you look further down here, there's a quick install section. We can type in git clone, and I'll just copy this link, and what it will do is then clone Veil from this link. So just wait for this to install. Firstly download and then install. It might take a little while, but what we've been able to do so far is have a CentOS 7 machine. We've done a yum update and installed all the latest repositories. We've then installed Python. We've then installed pip, and we've used pip to enable other modules. We are then able to install Git, and we've also installed the PyCrypto to enable encryption of different Python functions. And now we are installing Veil. Now once this has all installed, we can move on to the next step of actually customizing Veil and starting to use Veil to create different payloads and look at the different functions within Veil itself. Hopefully you've been able to follow along with these examples by installing either a CentOS 7 machine, and then you've gone on to create the Python installation, the pip installation, then we've looked at the PyCrypto installation, and then we've looked at the GitHub repository installation, and finally we've got the Veil installation in this lecture. So now once this has all installed, and I'm just waiting for it to still download and install, once that has been done, we'll be able to move to the next step. So now let's set up the Veil framework. We need to do that by /setup.sh, and we will click yes here to install the Veil evasion. You will note it's telling me that the wine package and the Ming package is not available. We can install those in the following manner. What we need to do is install the EPEL repository. So it's yum install EPEL, and let's have a look. It's got nothing to do. Let's do a search. So yum search for EPEL, and let's see what the name is called. It's called EPEL release. So let me copy that, and let's do a yum install for this particular name, and let's see how the install works. And hopefully this works. The EPEL repository contains some extra repositories and packages that the Veil framework will require. So let's see, we have installed the EPEL release here. We wanted to do a yum update to make sure all the files are updated again. So we have the latest repositories. I'm just going to wait for this to install and update. But just remember that there are some updates required, especially if you're trying to use the Veil framework. So let's run the setup again and take note of any repositories or packages that are not found. We'll need to install those packages at a later stage. I noticed one in the initial setup stage. So let's go through and install this to make sure there are no other errors, and we'll look closely for any requirements, any packages that are missing that the Veil framework will require. So again, I'm going to walk you through this process. You will have a very similar screen when you are installing the Veil framework on your machine. Again, I'm taking note, and I suggest you take note of any other packages that are not found that will require you to then manually install later on. I'll show you how we install any missing packages shortly. But for now, I'm just going to wait for this to all download and then install. And once that's installed, we can move on to the next step. This might take a little while, just depending on your processor speed and the internet capabilities, how fast your internet connection is. But hopefully this won't take too long. And as we can see here, that part has been complete. Let's just wait a short while more to see what else is required. It's doing a few more tasks. I haven't seen any more requirements of missing packages, so that's good news. Again, I'm setting this up live. I could have done it beforehand, but I think it's important to show you exactly what is happening on my end. If there are any errors, I want to point those out because you might have similar errors on your end, and you want to know how to handle that so you are not stuck. And we're just waiting for the installation to finish, and then we can move on to the next step. Again, just be patient with the installation. We want to make sure we have a successful Veil framework working so we can then create these undetectable viruses to show how a hacker would potentially infiltrate a network. Now again, this is in a controlled environment. Everything I'm doing is in a controlled environment. You don't want to run this outside of a controlled environment because you could run the risk of causing some serious damage to victims' computers, and if you're not careful, your IP address will be tracked and you might get a knock on your door. So you don't want any issues, you don't want any headaches. The last thing you want is to be doing this in a malicious way. It's not something I advocate, and it's shown to you here to give you an idea how a hacker thinks, how a hacker would create something of this nature, and more as an education process only. By knowing how hackers think, by knowing how hackers work, and how they create these malicious types of code, you can potentially go to a corporation and show your ethical hacking skills by being able to understand how the threat occurs. By understanding the mindset of the hacker, understanding the methods and the thinking of the hacker, this becomes an easier task for you. So there are a number of steps required to install the Veil framework. Most people would give up, but the hacker who is persistent will continue down this track. They will install Python, they will install pip, they will then go on to install PyCrypto and all the other requirements for Veil. And as you can see, there are certain packages that may be missing. Again, the serious hacker, the one who wants to cause damage, will go through all the steps to make sure they have the Veil framework working correctly so they could then create these malicious viruses that are almost impossible to detect by even the best virus scanners out there. So I'm just waiting for this to complete. It is installing some other dependencies. We're almost there. We'll just wait a short while longer and we will have the framework all working for us. Again, I'm leaving this step-by-step process in place so you can actually follow along to make sure that if you encounter any other errors, you can see on my screen and match up exactly where we are and what step we are at, so you can pinpoint errors. So we are looking here and we see there's an X server requirement. So what we can do is to go back to the prompt and we can install it in the following manner: yum install xorg minus x11 minus server minus xorg again, and this time it's installing the X server for us. As we can see here, I need to click yes, and that will download and install and then give us a complete signal that it has been completed. We also may need to install one more package, which is the X Windows system. So let me go ahead and type in a yum install command for that to install this X Windows system. We call it group install. So what it will do is then install this X Windows system for us. And once that has been done, I'll click yes. Just wait for this to download and install. And once that has been installed, we can then arrange to move to the next step. Yes, there are some building blocks required and certain steps to make sure this Veil framework works correctly. I have taken note of any missing packages, but now I want to reboot the server by typing reboot. For the packages to work correctly, we need to install a desktop environment. The desktop environment we'll be using here is the GNOME desktop. So you need to type in yum -y groups install open quotes GNOME desktop close quotes, and this process will then install the GNOME desktop environment. Once that has been installed, we want to start the X server. I'll show you how that's done shortly, but I'm walking you through the exact installation of the GNOME desktop in this particular video. It might take a short while, but you want to make sure that there are no errors, and by typing in the command yum -y groups install GNOME desktop, this process should work smoothly without any errors. And once that has been installed, we can then run the X server. So I'm just going to wait for this to load up and then we can get started on the next step. Once the GNOME desktop has been successfully installed, we type in the command start X and you will be presented with a screen like this, which shows the installation process. Once we click on next, we can go through the whole installation process and make sure X server starts. And once that has been completed, you will be presented with a screen that looks very much like this, which tells you you are ready to go. Here we have the ready to go box on the CentOS 7 machine. What we then want to do is go to applications and open a terminal window. So let's go ahead and do that. We can now go ahead and install Veil. So let's open up a terminal window, applications, and you will see an option called terminal under applications. We have terminal, and once we have that open, we will be presented with a terminal window. And from there, we want to go to the particular directory to install Veil. So we need to make sure we are logged in properly. I'm already logged in as root, so I don't need to do anything there. Let's go to the fail directory, cd fail evasion, and we want to run the setup file here. So /setup.sh, and we will be presented with the setup. Just before that though, I want to make sure to look at the resolve.config file. So let's have a look and make sure the name server, that seems okay. And I want to double check the IP address for the two network cards. So let's just type in IP address, and I will just use the DHCP server to get the IP addresses so the network works. Now I can run the setup.sh file, and let's do that. We have an IP address now, so everything seems to be working okay. We run the setup.sh file, and hopefully the setup goes through smoothly. If there are any errors, I'll just investigate that. Here's something that says line 175. So let me go ahead and just check that line out. The error might be, I'll just use the VIM editor to look at that line 175 and see if the error is easily identifiable. If not, we'll just continue and let's see what we can do in the setup process itself. Let me scroll down and have a look what we can do. All the packages seem to have been installed okay. Now we'll just want to configure those packages, and to configure them, what I will do is just scroll down here and make sure that if we can remove this package that talks about wine, and let me see the message that we get. We are trying to get the next step, which is the Python installation to work. So what I'll do here, it says existing Veil wine environment detected. Let me nuke this one. So I'll click yes here, and let's go through the installation process to get to where we can install Python. We'll come back to the wine environment in the next video, but for now let's just nuke this and move on to the Python installation. Just double checking that yes, we'll just put yes, and then let's move on to the rest of the installation, and hopefully the installation goes smoothly at this point. And if that all works fine, we will be presented with a window to install Python. Here we have it has been finished, and now we should get the installation for the Python 2.7 release. Just wait for that to come up, and then we'll install Python. There we have the 2.7.5. You'll get this window. We will click on install for all users and click on next, and we will just make sure that this installation goes through smoothly. That looks fine. I'll click next, and let's just wait for the installation of Python to finish. And once that has been completed, we can continue with the Veil installation and start using Veil to enable our exploits to be created. So we'll just wait for Python to finish, and then we can get started in the next video.